Hi, I'm Kirsten, CEO of Breast Cancer Network Australia, and I'm here with Sanjay Warrior, the President of Breast Surgeons, to deal with some of the questions that have come out from two very important decisions that we have let you know through Facebook. So Sanjay, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
A couple of things, there's two issues. One is yesterday, Allegan sending out an international recall of all textured breast implants and expanders.
Yes.
The second being that the TGA have sent out an opportunity for us to respond to a potential ban on all textured implants in Australia.
Yes.
Let's deal first of all with the Allegan recall. Tell us a little bit about what you know about that recall.
So I think when we look at the climate of where the recalls happen, it's happened on a background of rates of a rare condition called anaplastic large cell lymphoma. And what we know when we talk about textured implants in general, the higher the texture, the more stability with the implant. We also know there's a higher chance of this rare condition. And based on the rate being off latest figures being 1 in over 2,000, but not 3,000, so it's about one in 2,000. With the Allegan implant, there's been a recommendation, firstly from the TGA, for a ban on Allegan implants, and based on that, and with the secondary likely move of the FDA to remove it, Allegan has withdrawn those products.
So if we stay specifically on those products, how would you know as a woman who's had an implant if this does impact you?
Yeah, I think the important thing from somebody who actually has these implants in is, firstly, if you're not sure whether you've got them, the best way is to probably contact your surgeon that's put them in to work out what type of implants. It's good to know that anyway, so you've got an idea of what the risk profile is.
So my understanding is, as a patient, you'll probably get a small card that says what kind of implant you have. But as we've been discussing at the breast cancer trials community, many women may have disposed of that. So if they haven't, then the best action is to talk to their surgeon.
We don't expect everyone to have the card with them. It's not easy to keep all the information through a reconstructive process. And I think if you don't have the card, it's easy to work out also from the hospital operation report. But that's really just so you've got an idea of what type of implant you're having.
So if you do know that you've got an Allegan implant in now, what's your advice as a surgeon to those women?
Yeah, my advice is it's not a strong risk. You're still looking at, it's not zero, but when we're proportionally looking at it, we're looking at 1 in 2,000 as the risk. Comparatively, the risk for breast cancer is 1 in 8. So if you put your 7 friends in a room, one of you in your lifetime will get a breast cancer. Comparatively, you'd need 2,000 people to potentially have, usually 85% of the time, a chance to actually take out the capsule and potentially put a smooth implant in. So it's being aware of the risk, but generally my advice would be not to proceed with surgery, but it's a personal decision. Yeah.
And I think that is an important message, because what we want to do is reduce the anxiety that people are feeling, and of course they're feeling anxious.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so that important message of going and talking to your surgeon. So aLCL, how does that kind of present? What would I know? So that is the type of cancer that people are concerned about, that an implant may, with that risk of 1 in 2,000. How would I know if I had that?
So aLCL tends to present firstly with either a lump or with swelling or with associated pain with the implant. So if you have symptoms associated with the implant is when it's important particularly to see a surgeon to have it investigated. And what we would do is generally we would start with an ultrasound to assess for fluid. It's not uncommon to have a small rim of fluid around an implant, and generally if it's incredibly small rim, we would ultrasound in 6 months to see if there's a change. If it's an increase, then we would aspirate and test the fluid to see whether or not there are particular cells present, and that's starting to get a bit more technical if we go into that. Yeah.
Do we know in Australia how many women have these implants in that have been recalled?
Yeah, I don't know exact amounts with how many current implants are in with Allegan implants. What we do know that we are starting to move towards a registry over the last couple of years, where when devices are being placed in, we're getting a better idea of who's actually putting them in, and that's an opt-in approach. So we are starting to get ideas about proportions of implants going in. The companies would know that. Like, I think the company would, because you're not just talking about the reconstructive group, you're also talking about the aesthetic, whether it's cosmetic or plastic group as well.
So let's go on to talk about the TGA. So last week they sent out a message publicly saying that they were considering banning all textured implants, and they have provided all of us with the opportunity to submit. What does that mean though for women who, let's talk about the ones who currently have a textured implant in. What is our advice to them?
Yeah, so I think when we look at the TGA is there to protect the public. They ultimately have to look at risks associated with implants and particularly textures. And as we spoke at the beginning, the higher the texture, the more the risk. We subdivide implant textures into macro textures, which is the Allegan type, and micro textures or lower grade textures, and they come with a less risk. So when we look at a micro textured implant, the risk that's we're currently quoting from the latest data is over 1 in 14,000, close to 1 in 15,000. So and again, proportionally, that's a 15 times less risk than getting a sarcoma from radiation post-wide local excision. So proportionally, it's an incredibly rare condition, and the treatment for it is just usually, not always, but usually taking the capsule and putting a smooth implant in.
Yeah.
So in the reconstructive setting, compared to the aesthetic group as well, we're fortunate that often people have contact with a surgeon that they respect, and our advice would be to make contact with your professional around the type of implant, with regards to, but the real thing to take on board is you don't necessarily need to have it out.
Yeah. And I think it is really important for our membership to understand that the cosmetic discussions are quite different to that of breast reconstruction, and that does not mean that there is any less anxiety for you. But what we do know is that you are under surveillance a lot more than someone who's had an implant cosmetically, who has the implant and then may have a follow-up in the year, but then go on. So I think the most important thing is for people to reach out to their surgeons, and if you are anxious, then the most important thing is to have an individual consultation with your surgeon, because everyone's experience and situation is so different, and it would be great if we could just make a one-size-fits-all approach, but I think it's really important.
I agree 100%. Like, I think end of the day, it comes down to what is the risk, what does that mean for you, but understanding that this isn't a common condition. In fact, it's incredibly rare, particularly with a micro-textured device. Our current discussions with the TGA that we've been working on is actually, we don't see it as a high risk when it comes to expanders, and also because we haven't had cases with expanders causing aLCL, and also the micro textures. I think the reason that the texture helps is it provides shape to the implant. Ultimately, the TGA have to take on board what we've said, and they have to make an independent decision on what is the safest thing for the public.
Yeah, and there is some time before we will get that decision. So I think in this interim period, if you are feeling anxious, you must go and see your surgeon. So there is one more group of people who we at BCNA are very worried about, and that is the people who are about to go into surgery. What should we be saying to them, and what should they be doing to make sure they're making a really informed decision about what kind of surgery they're having?
I think it's good that they're aware of potential risks. So we've got, everything we do comes with risk. When we operate, that comes with a risk. It's understanding where that fits with your decision tree. The thing with expanders is they provide options for reconstruction. It comes with incredibly low risk. This is one of the risks. Other things include infection, breakdown of wound, etc. So it's ultimately understanding the risk and having a discussion with your treating specialist about those risks.
So thank you so much, Sanjay. We hope that's helpful. The most important thing is to have those one-on-one consultations. Everyone's experience is going to be very different. And BCNA will continue to make sure that we represent the voices of all Australians who've been affected by breast cancer, and we will continue to update you on any information we have. The best way to do that is to follow us on Facebook and keep going back to our website at bcna.org.au for the latest news. So thank you very much. Thanks, Sanjay.
Thank you. Appreciate it.